So my intention was always to grow a team around this. The second one is, what happens if something happens to me? I want to tell you who is going to take care of my stuff if something happens to me. And they're standing up here, and they're sitting in the back of this room. These are the people I trust, love, and care for. These are the people that I've assembled here that win the award for the people. So this, to me, is extremely important. But what I've been remiss in is telling you what I've been doing and why I've been bringing, for instance, Mike on or Zach on or others. There's no doubt, once you meet them, you'll see. But I want to be intentional about that. So typically, Zach said this maybe when he came in, or maybe a couple of 6 months ago or so. You know, the advisor that I used to work with, some of the advisors I used to work with, not to name any names, once they get to be 25 years and get all these accolades and do pretty well, guess what they do? Right? You get 75, 100 rounds of golf in the month, right? Just so you know, I got like 12 in this year, if that's it. I don't believe we're as good as we can be. I'm more excited than ever to provide a better experience for you, better programs for you, better meetings for you, and more importantly, better outcomes for you. So the key as we go forward, as I have teams, there have been 5 people on your team for a long time, and I haven't told you or shown you. Sometimes you show up at an appointment and go, well, who's this? You see, I've been bringing team members of yours into the meetings because it's extremely important. These guys are fantastic. These guys are great at what they do, and they're definitely committed. So what I'm doing is bringing other members of your team to the table, and I think it's an addition. It's just a wonderful piece for you to see. When we look down and we look at all your scenario behind the scenes and go, here's the 5 things we need to see. I may drive part of it 20 minutes. Ken may drive 20 or 30 minutes of it, but I want you to see us in it. I want you to understand who it is you're comfortable with, your entire team, because each one of you has 5 of us, if not all 8, that you've talked to in the back of the room. So the intention is to continue to grow a firm that has this kind of service and being one of the best in the business, not the business. The only business I'm concerned with is you. I'm not concerned with the awards we get, it's you. You are the outcome we're looking for. As long as next year, the award that we get is continuing to be your advisor, we're satisfied. We're not looking to go out and get all these awards that you see out there, but we're blessed that we do and thankful and grateful that we have. So I want to be intentional about that. I'll keep you more posted as we go, but it's kind of an interesting piece as we go through. Also what we've been doing from Andrea, you've seen the Gentian team, but this outside consultant has helped us with every single day. It may seem odd, but we have about a 5 or 10 minute powwow. We stand around in the new Gentian hall, and we all talk about, what are we doing today? What do we need? And this is amazing that every single day we hadn't done it before. Because all the little things you guys need, we can talk about quick, we can help each other get it done. Also, you'll see we have monthly development days. You may have noticed this. Wednesday, once a month, we take 6 hours in the middle of the day, shut our doors, shut off the phones. Why? Because we want to get better, and we're intentional about a process. We're intentional about how we're going to do reviews. We're intentional about internal processes, how we handle meetings, and we get better at those. These have been, at least to our team, off the charts. The results have so far. So internally, it's working extremely well. Continuing education, Peter talked a bit about in September. I think Ken was at Empowered Wealth. Zach, I think you were, and actually Peter was at APFA. But these are very important. Peter and I just got back from Bullseye. Phenomenal pieces. So some of the conversation on communication that we got there was top of the industry. The gentleman who runs it was the person who just reorganized all of Tony Robbins' scenario. You guys ever heard of the company Poopery? You may use the product. It's a $100 million company now, run from a woman who simply started with an idea. Nick just helped her with her marketing, and simply a phenomenal organization. He works with presidents, Fortune 500 companies. We're fortunate enough to have a small group, a mastermind of about 30 of us, to help each other with both technology and thought processes. So very interesting to see as we go along. And then in November, we'll all head to Strategic Coach. So I just want to give you a little bit of an idea. We're continuing to invest in you, and what happens is as we get better, we can communicate better, which we're going to talk about a little bit later as well. So I wanted to give you some background on that and start to take what's in my head and start to give that to you. So it's worth it. I owe it to you, and I've been remiss in doing it. So not much I hide, but I guess I just think, well, you know it. So thank you. New and noteworthy. Anybody here listen to Dr. Gladden's podcasts? So there's a podcast called Living Beyond 120. If you know how to get a podcast, and I'm saying that because Ken's going to bring up some statistics here. I've just taught my mom on her phone what a podcast was. And then the question asked is, have you listened to one? Well, I know where the podcasts are. So I get it. Step 1, we're going step at a time here. Some phenomenal research has been coming out here. Guess what one of the most important things to living long and healthy is? It's all the physical stuff we talked about. Guess what the number one thing they're finding is now? A mindset. They took 70-year-old men and they put them in this was in the 70s, took a study of 70-year-old men and they put them in a home, so I think it was 20 of them, in a home that was modeled after the 1950s. They turned on Ozzie and Harriet, they turned on all the TV shows, they had the furniture from the 50s. Guess what happened 1 week later? The these were men who had to walk in canes, and they were 70, they were starting to really show their age. 1 week later, they began physically to operate like they were 50. All that it was mental and environment. Sometimes we age. We've got to be careful with that. Very, very interesting to watch, but as we go along, well, now I'm this age, so this is how people are. Or not. You've got to be careful with that. So it's a big piece as you go on. Another one is the food of the future. So everything you ate today was 3D printed. It was from a lab. I'll say that sometime in the future and it'll be true. It wasn't today. And you go, what? Did we really? How was it? It was pretty good. Uber Elevate this year is operating its test flights coming up in 2020 in Dallas and Los Angeles and now Melbourne. By 2023, you'll be able to take Uber Elevate. That's flying cars, flying taxis, commercially. You'll be able to hop in Uber Elevate and go across Los Angeles without traffic. Kind of crazy, eh? So this is coming closer and closer. Quantum computing, Google. Anybody heard of Google? Just came up with a computer that in 200 seconds does something that used to take 10,000 years. So, kind of a cool thing. Now they just got to find, what do you do with that, right? Senolytics. Anybody here know what Senolytics is? I was hoping so because I don't really have a clue. It's a good word, sounds nice, sounds like a word I make up, right? Senolytics is the science of aging healthfully. So aging very healthy. So we look at this we all want to live long, but we want to have longevity with health. Senolytics is one of the newest things they're talking about. We've talked about it here, so you're going to start to hear more about it. When you hear that word, you can say, yeah, I know what that means. So if nothing else today, you've learned one vocabulary word, Senolytics, the science of healthy longevity. All right? So what we're reading, this is a good one. So some clients have asked us, what books are you reading? I'd like to run through a few. Ken, if you'd like to start with yours.
I'm reading Capitalism in America, by Alan Greenspan, former Federal Reserve Chairman. And it's 500 pages long, so I'll get you a dissertation by tomorrow. But I'm in the early 1900s, basically, when there was an urge to merge in America, basically. So U.S. Steel, number one steel company in America at that point in time, went out to Lake Superior and captured and secured one of the largest iron ore deposits we have in America, and that's how U.S. Steel became in control of 50% of the steel in the early 1900s. So I just learned that last night, actually, as I read that piece. So that's what I'm reading right now. So I'm in the 1900s, a little behind the times, but I'll get there.
Zach, how about yourself?
Yep, I just finished the book called Good to Great. It's been recommended to me by many, many people, and if any of you guys really enjoy history or company history, market history, or just want to see what it takes to become good to great individually as well, it's a phenomenal read, and it's from the 1970s to the 1990s. They took companies that were on a good pace along with their relative peers and then went on a different trajectory than everyone else. And they wanted to figure out why that was and why was it so few of companies that did that. And two of those, interestingly, were Kimberly-Clark and Walgreens during that time. So it's a phenomenal read if you really enjoy history and a little market history as well.
What I'm reading right now is called Land of Hope from William McClay. It's the first 200, 300 pages are about the history. It goes back into the history of America about where we came from in Europe, the different wars. Actually, it even goes back into why Martin Luther went into Catholicism, and he said that there's some issues going on. It's amazing to go back and see that, and then to see where people were planted in America and why we are like we are, without anybody's opinion. I mean, as little as you can. It's just more really factual history, which is very cool. So I've read it's a great book. If you ever want, there's an Empire of Wealth, there's American Capitalism, which Ken is reading, and then Land of Hope. If you want to be a proud American, understand who we are and where we're from, it's almost should be required reading. So we'll tell you more about this. Maybe we'll put them out on our website too for you. But I think this is a good one here. So one of my great clients here, great friends and great family members, if you will, David Krills, who's sitting right up front, gave me a book probably 2 seminars ago. I think it is, David Brooks was a commencement address talk for Marquette University. If anybody hasn't read the book, The Second Mountain, fantastic book. It says the first mountain's about ego and all the stuff you need to do and get, and how basically you get there and you're like, wow, that wasn't nearly as fulfilling as I'd hoped it'd be. The second mountain is about commitment, it's about community, it's about giving and doing for others. Phenomenal book. Ken is in the middle and reading it as well. But that's one of those books I recommend too. It's a great life-changing book. If anybody's read it, he is on TV all the time. It's really cool to read about him and his journey as well, because he'll be very vulnerable in the book. So many of you have come to me at a program or a seminar in the past, maybe 15, 20 years ago if we stroll down amnesia lane. But what we used to do was teach fundamentals. What we've realized is we get up here sometimes and espouse all this stuff and does some PE ratios and small, mid, large cap. And from time to time, one of you may not know exactly what that is. What we're going to do is take about 5 or 10 minutes and go through what some of those fundamentals actually mean. So when we're talking about it, you might have an aha moment, okay? So what I want to do is have Zach begin a portion that we have that is really basically, it's called Investment 101, but I'm going to call it the fundamentals. And remember was it Vince Lombardi who started every year with, this is a football. So, folks, this is Investing 101.
Thanks, Chris. And continuing along with how much I love sports, and specifically playing basketball, you always start with layups before you start shooting threes. Even the best player in the world, but one of the best players in the world, one of the best three-point shooters in NBA history, Steph Curry, starts with the basics. And that's the purpose of this, is just to get our mind right, just to avoid any confusion as we do get into the more complicated terms. And for those of you that have been very well-educated investors for a long time, just bear with me for a little bit. But we're going to start with an X-ray view of Investment 101 and then transition to more of an MRI view. So first, at the very low end, you can either spend or save your money. If you decide to save your money, you can save that as cash. For simplicity, we'll make a couple generalizations here, and we'll include money market and savings account in this category. Over the long term, the cash department has returned 0 to 2%, 2% being extremely generous. As we know, our savings account are getting currently 0.00 nothing. The next level up of investing is known as income, and this is where you start to involve bonds, CDs, municipal bonds, and how those work is that you loan out your money to a local government, to a company, to a local corporation, and then they pay you a set amount of interest for a set amount of time, and then they return the principal back to you. That, over the course of history, has returned 3 to 5%. The next level up is where you start to involve the stock market. The first level of the stock market is known as growth and income. These are the companies like Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, Walmart, companies that if the market absolutely went down tomorrow, they're still going to be around because people aren't going to stop buying Band-Aids or Tylenol, etc. But because there's not as much of a growth potential for those companies anymore, they give back to you in the form of a dividend. So that's where the income comes in. Over the course of history, those companies have returned 7 to 9% over the long term. The next level up is known as growth. Those are still massively large companies, but instead of giving a dividend back to you, they're actually reinvesting in themselves to continue to try to grow. That, over the course of history, has returned 9 to 11% per year. At the very top, we have what is known as aggressive, and that's where you involve emerging markets, real estate investment trusts, micro-cap stocks. It's a little bit more aggressive, and those over the long term have returned 10+%. Now, if we're looking at a little bit more of the MRI view, you can see as we go up the pyramid, your return potential goes up, but your risk goes up as well. So the reason for the pyramid is it creates a baseline of how we create a portfolio and what your goals are. If someone is my age, they really don't need much cash or income in the form of bonds. Most of their money should be in growth and income, growth, or the aggressive space, depending on exactly how long they have to invest and what they're investing for. But most of the people in the room here are using their investments to produce income. And that's where the bonds help stabilize that road, and so we don't take part in the 19.8% corrections like we had at the end of last year. And so if we're looking at more of the MRI view, when we're looking at the growth and income section, that's where you involve the large cap companies, the extremely large companies. You have the value, the ones that are giving the big dividend that are at a lower price to normal. And then you have the growth. Those are the Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google's, still massively large companies, but they're still in that growth and income category because of their size. Mm-hmm. The next level up, if you guys look in your portfolio or on a statement, you'll see things like large cap value, large cap growth, mid cap, small cap, and that's where those fall in. They fall in more in the growth section. And as you go up, mid cap is a little less aggressive and a little more safe than small cap. And moving up to the very top, that's where you have emerging markets and real estate investment trusts, et cetera. Now, a great portfolio contains elements of all of these, but at a different percentage. Because growth and income is a little less risky, a higher portion of the portfolio is in that space. A little bit less in mid cap, a little bit less in small cap, moving up the investment pyramid.
I have a question. Can you go back real quick, Zach?
Yes, absolutely, Chris.
So if I'm looking at that, where does marijuana stocks, where does, all the stuff everybody's talking about today, especially when you're in Colorado, that, and how about cryptocurrency? Where might those fall in that plan?
That's a great question, Chris. I would say at the very top, it would be in the aggressive phase, and it wouldn't really apply to that percentage of return because they haven't been proven long enough yet. And because of that track record that they do not have, those wouldn't be involved in a portfolio for quite some time. But that overall, just for the sake of the investment pyramid, that would land in that aggressive space.
Almost speculation, almost. Good call.
Exactly right. And so here's a little bit of trivia for you guys and just a couple fun facts. The best performer, if we're looking at large cap, mid cap, and small cap, since 1972, for 2019, mid cap has been the best returning. On the 3-year, it's been large cap. 5-year, large cap. 10-year, mid cap. 15, mid cap. 20, mid cap. 30, mid cap.
What?
45, small cap.
What? How did that even work? How's that happen?
And here's a little trivia for you guys. The closest person, I'll accept 5 or so guesses. Over the last 48 years, how many times has mid-cap had the best 1-year return? So a number between 0 and 48. And remember, there's a lot of mid-cap on the left side there. Anyone have any guess?
What'd you guess, Lynn? Did you guess? 2? Okay.
2? That's a great guess.
Yes. Anyone else?
25?
Okay.
Okay. 17?
17?
40?
40?
Okay, I'll accept one more.
Anybody else?
5. That is the closest one. It is actually 9.
So here.
$200,000.
Of those 48 years, small cap has won 23 times and large cap 16.
Wow.
Confusing, right? It's meant to be ambiguous because all of these happen at different times, so why try to choose which one's going to do better when? You have no idea how many different advisors have opinions on this. They might say that, oh, large cap is the best place to be all the time, don't need any small caps or mid caps. Some people say, well, we don't need any small caps, just mid cap and large cap. Well, what if during those years, small cap gives us 3 years worth of returns in 1 year? Wouldn't that be great for our portfolio? So we have them, and it's just an extra way to diversify risk and to build a portfolio for each and every one of you guys.
Now, I met a Nobel Prize winner when I went to dimensional funds out in, very fortunate out in Los Angeles. And when I looked at this, you see how small cap is the winner over 45 years? So we talked about this. How long can small cap between like growth and value, how long can it be out of favor? He said 25, 30 years. I did ask the question, I think if you remember, how much data does it take for me to get an idea whether it's a good manager or just a lucky guess? He says about 2,500 years. I said, okay, in all real life. He said about 15 when you start to take a look at it. But you start to look at this here, and if I looked at the numbers, well, you'd think, well, small cap on the right? Small cap is what it should be. You look at the left and go, what's definitely mid cap? Wait, it's got to be small, large, then mid. It's amazing to look at, but it's just kind of it's a great point. Thanks, Zach.
Switching gears just a touch, we'll just take a look at what the markets have done overall since January 1 of 2018. The top line that you see there, it's kind of hard to see the numbers, but the top line, the green line, is the S&P 500, and that is up 10.02% since the beginning of last year, since 2018. Bonds is the next line, and that's the red line, is 3.10% up. And then the next line is international large cap. That's down negative 6.56% still since the beginning of last year. And then emerging markets are down negative 13.26. So it's really interesting to see because as you can see, we see this big drop here, and we all felt that. That was from October to the end of December last year. The S&P 500 corrected 19.8%. The definition of when a bear market starts is 20. That's pretty darn close to the original definition. And as if it smells like a bear.
If it smells like a bear, if it claws like a bear and growls like a bear, it's a bear. So I give you permission to say, yes, we've had a bear market. Matter of fact, we have 2 in the last 10 years, also in 2014. So.
And then just for the start of this year, so starting at this middle line right here is January 1st of 2019. The S&P 500 is up 19.51% as of market close on Tuesday. Bonds, 8.07%, international large cap 13.33% up, and emerging markets up 5.43%. So the S&P 500 is up 19.51%. Over the long term, if you guys remember, the S&P 500 has returned 9.9 to 10% over the long term. So we possibly got 2 years worth of returns since January 1. So a phenomenal year to look at.
Absolutely. It's a great point. So Zach gets the honor to talk about the stock market going up. I get the honor to talk about the stock market going down.
It says you get to mature.
But market corrections, they're swift and visceral. They come without warning. Their length of stay is unknown. They're not pleasant when they are around. But the whole point of market corrections is that when you look at this, Warren Buffett, does anybody regard Warren Buffett to be one of the greatest investors of all time? He wants to buy your stocks when the markets are down. So if anybody wants to sell stocks that's out there, not you guys, but anybody that's an investor out there that wants to sell their stocks, he wants to buy them. I give you guys a lot of credit in the room because you're not good investors. You're elite investors, and I mean that because when markets go down, like we've seen, I'll talk about this in a little bit. We don't get the phone calls to say, "Hey, let's get out of this." You know that long-term, you have that long-term perspective with you, and that's the key to investing on this one. The annual end of the world. So you can't see this chart. What it does, it talks about where the markets ended up versus what happened throughout the year, okay? So the annual end of the world from one of our financial coaches says this: how many times does the world have to end before investors realize that the world is not going to end? Right? So Y2K, everybody remember Y2K? Everybody thought the world was going to come to an end at that point in time. That was a computer issue, pretty much. But the whole point of it is that at that point in time, in 2001 and 2, we went through a three-year recession, right? The world was coming to an end at that point in time. 2008 came, 2009, that was a fast one, right? We thought the world was coming to an end at that point in time. We didn't, but a lot of people out there do. 2014 into 15, kind of stayed flat in the markets. Are we ever going to make money again? We didn't make any money this year. Are we ever going to make money? Is our portfolio? The world almost came to an end. 2018, last year, like Zach talked about, the markets were down almost 20%. That was almost the end of the world until January and February and March came because it happened so quickly, people couldn't even realize it was the end of the world because it happened so fast. But the whole point of it is that the sun will come out again. Now, this might be my weird thinking here, but if you ever go on vacation, do you ever feel like you kind of look at the weather and be like, oh, yeah, all right, it's going to be sunshine, right? It's going to be great. You almost want it to rain a few days before you get there, right? Because you know that the sun will come out when you're there probably, because it rains for 4 or 5 days, and then it's beautiful, right? So if you ever go on vacation, that's how I think about it at least. But if we go through a market correction, again, your portfolio may go on vacation, but you did not buy a one-way ticket. You bought a two-way ticket. It will come back around, okay? So that's the whole point about the annual end of the world at that point in time.
Who here, by a show of hands, thought that this year has been an extremely volatile year in the stock market? Absolutely. Okay. We 100% agreed, and we wanted to check the data to see how volatile it was, because we hear every single day about how it's going up and up and down. We see that someone tweets, the market goes down, and someone tweets, the market goes up. Not naming any names. But this chart up here is showing the number of days the S&P 500 went either up 1% or down 1%. One of the very simple ways that we can check how much volatility there's actually been. And this chart is showing since 1985, the average number of market days that either go up 1% or down 1% is almost 25% of the time. This year, in 2019, it's only been 17%. So it's actually less volatile than historical averages. How can that be? I mean, we see it every day. We hear about it every day. Maybe that's part of the issue of why we think it's so volatile, is that we're constantly bombarded with it, and it seems like the world is ending almost on a daily basis. So we just wanted to show you that one, that over historical averages, it's actually a little less volatile than normal. And of the 20 of the 32 days that have moved up or down 1%, they've been up.
So what interesting as well is we had a great chance for about an hour and a half or 2 hours to be in the car together yesterday and talk about this. But when you look at this, what is 1% now on a 26,000 point Dow? It's a 260 point move. Now remember, for many of you in this room, other than Zach, maybe Ken, the market started near 260. The S&P, when you were born in 1960, was about 41. Many of you, it was 14. So you start looking at these, perspective comes in a very big way. That's why a lot of people have a lot of misperceptions. We're going to talk a bit about that and how strong they are in those misperceptions. I just like data. I try to stay neutral to it all and look at data. Who pays all the taxes? I can look and see. Is it more volatile? Yeah, it sure is. Well, you just may have more news than ever. In 1980, did you have 47 news channels that were on 24 hours a day? No. Do you today? Yes. So perspective is extremely important. That's why we read the books, and that's also why we listen to tons and tons of information on this. Thanks, Zach.
So the next slide is showing S&P 500 valuations, according to historical average as well, going back to 1994. And this one we wanted to show because we hear a lot of questions of, well, we've been on the biggest bull market that we've ever had. What does that mean for the market? It's got to go down at some point, right? We wanted to look at, is the market currently at a premium or a discount or right in the middle compared to historical average? And what we found is that the PE ratio, the price to earnings ratio, looking forward, is right around the 25-year average. And it's currently at 16.62. So we're not really overextended in the market. If we look at the mid to late 1990s, it was almost trading at 24 times its price to earnings ratio. So that means we're not necessarily at an extreme premium or discount. We're right in the middle. There's still a lot of value left in the market, even though we've been on a 9-year bull run, depending on the definition that you're using.
The part about this is astounding is, as Zach just said, you're seeing people get out of the market. You're seeing them on a day-to-day basis. Get out of the market because it's expensive. In what respect? See, but you're seeing people make bad decisions on it. Your friends are. I see it because there's more cash going into money market, and Ken's going to talk about net redemption of stocks than we've ever seen. So these are those behavioral items we want to take a look at, and when we teach them to you, you're great behaviorists. It's awesome. You become phenomenal behaviorists, phenomenal investors, as Ken had said. But this is one of those perspectives. Why is everybody running for the exits? Because they're misinformed. They don't have your perspective, okay?
That's exactly right. And this one's going to be very hard for you guys to see, so I'll summarize it as best I can. But if you remember Investment 101, we had the large cap, mid cap, and small cap. This one is showing how those respective asset classes are valued right now currently as well. Most of the asset classes are right around their 20-year average as far as their price to earnings ratio, except the one major thing to note is that small cap growth is currently trading at 140% higher than its normal price to earnings ratio. So as you hear and as you see people, small cap growth has been going up for quite a long time. People might say, oh, your money should be there, but it's overextended. And if you look at the other side of it, small cap value is actually only 90%. So it's actually at an extreme value. Could take 20 years for that to catch up, but it's all just another reason why try to be smarter than it, and why try to guess which one is going to be better for the long term.
And the question often comes up, how long can that happen? Dr. Eugene Fama, the Nobel Prize winner from DFA, said it could run for 25 years out of favor. So you think, well, I'll just jump into that because it's lower value right now. Well, eventually it'll come back, but you might be out of the wrong thing. It's why we diversify. You don't know what's going to be next.
Here, the stock market since the 1900s, the whole point about this is that a lot of people, just like Zach said, that they're getting out of the markets because they're misinformed. We think that there's a correction coming. Who knows if there is a correction coming, but the top of the right-hand part of this chart shows that we're in probably the third inning of a 9-inning game right now in what we call a bull market meaning going up. We're probably in the third inning of that. Why is this happening right here? The reason why the markets are going up right now, it's not because individual investors like us in the room are actually putting money to work. It's because of corporate buybacks for the most part right now. That means that companies are actually buying back their own stock, much like Apple is right now. Much like Johnson Controls here in Milwaukee is actually buying back their stock right now, and their price of the stock is going up. You take less shares out of the market, they're just more valuable because there's less shares that are out there. So that's actually happening because of corporate buybacks right now. Also, there is a ton of cash on the sideline, and I wanted to know what a ton of cash means. So I went to the Federal Reserve and found out that, this is their words, from grandmothers to hedge funds, there's $2.9 trillion in money market funds right now. $2.9 trillion.
All-time high.
$4.4 trillion in checking accounts and currency, so that, who knows what the currency means there. $12.1 trillion in savings accounts and CDs at the bank. That adds up to $20 trillion of cash that's out there. Now, is some of that going to come back? It's hard to say. But the Federal Reserve also says that the U.S. stocks right now are worth $40 trillion. If you take a cumulative total of everything, stocks are worth $40 trillion. That means 50% of the money that's out there is in cash. It's quite a bit. Imagine if we're sitting down with you and you wanted to have 40% of your money in cash. Do you think we'd allow that? Probably not, right? It's your money, of course, right? But most of the time, having 50% in cash doesn't make a lot of sense because cash doesn't do a lot for us. We like it because we can drive to the bank and get our envelope with our money in it. We can touch it. But it really doesn't do that much for us longer term. So there's quite a bit of cash that's out there. This is why we don't want to hold on to cash. This is a good one. You can't see it again, so I'm going to make a story out of it. But we all know that stocks on a short-term basis can be way up or way down. We know that. We all know that. But you look at it at a 20-year period, if we have some longevity to this and some longer-term vision on this, that this says over a 20-year period, the worst 20-year period to be an investor since 1950, stocks still earned 6% per year for those 20 years. Why is that important? You just went through that, by the way. That was from 2000 to 2019. You just went through that, so congratulations.
Absolutely.
Right? But during that time frame, guess what happened? Your money doubled. Your money doubled. That's good. That gets us to where we want to be. Because the best it's ever been was 17% per year. That was the 80s and 90s. That means your money quadrupled. So if we go through that time frame again, things are going to be pretty good. Now, the reason why we want to stay a stock investor, not all in stocks, but a portion of it, and a good portion of it, is that when you look at the worst time frame right now for bonds, they only average 1%. 1% for 20 years. If we're using around 4% of our portfolio every year for withdrawals so we can enjoy the things we want to do in life, if we're taking out 4, but we get too conservative and we're only earning 1%, is that an issue? Mm-hmm. That's an issue. If we're taking out 4% and we have maybe a blend here and we're getting 5 or 6% on our money longer term and we're only taking out 4, are we going to be okay? We're going to be okay. That's the point, is stay in stocks. You all know this. You've been with us for a long time. But for those who are accumulating money or getting ready to retire, this is critical. This will be a critical piece to the success of your long-term plan, is to have the proper amount of stocks in your plan.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask a question here. Does anybody have any idea what the word apogee means? Because I have no clue. I like to make up words. I made up a word today. It's called plagiarism. That one you got to take a bit and go, what the hell are you talking about? The apogee of the baby boom. So from 1946 to 1964, what are they called? Anybody here born in that time frame? I was not. But there are some. So I've got some there, and then we have the greatest generation after. The baby boomer, the apogee of it, you've heard about this incredible swath changing our economy as they age. As you're looking at the apogee is the peak. The peak year of the baby boomer, born in 1957, is right now, they're turning 62. Why is that important? What can they collect at 62? Social Security, might that be a big thing? If the biggest generation, the peak of it, is beginning to collect Social Security now, it drives our economy. So as we look at this, why is that important? Because just being born in 1960, it's kind of a crazy piece here, but you look at the Consumer Price Index, this is just the CPI, is actually up 9 times. 9 times since 1960. Matter of fact, the S&P over that same time as your costs have gone up is up 50 times. Here's what's really interesting. What are the components of that? Oh my goodness, the dividends are 28 times of that. Over half the return has come from dividend reinvestment. Matter of fact, if you go back to 1874, the return of the market's been 9.3% since 1874, about 5% of the return of which has come from reinvestment of dividends. Very, very important piece. Matter of fact, Nick Murray updated that, where if you go back to 1957, 9 times, 70 times, about 34 times. The cash-on-cash return of investing since 1960 is if I put $1 in, right now my dividend is $1.39 on the $1 I invested. If you got time, compounding is phenomenal. Okay? This is Warren Buffett. He looks at the portfolio very consistently. You've seen this. During rough times, when people are handing their stock in, what's he doing? But what I do want to get to here is something everybody knows about, and everybody knows my definition of politics, right? Poly from the Greek word meaning many, and ticks being blood-sucking insects. So as we look at this, though, this becomes a visceral time, right? Try to have a conversation. You want to end a friendship? You want to end a friendship? Talk politics with somebody on the other side. True? Just about like talking religion now, maybe even worse. You start to look at this. You want to stop the table going, well, just say something about, you can even mean to say something about a card game you're playing, and you'll get a visceral reaction. Well, you could trump that. What? Very rarely has a president had that kind of a, I don't know what we're going to call it, just is what it is. But what's very interesting here is there's some people, and I won't mention anybody in the room because there's nobody in this one, but I have seen 2 clients over time, unfortunately with me, and they made the decision because of who was elected to leave the market because the United States was in peril. So fortunately for you, I've learned this from them, and you haven't had to. But when you look at this, I want to show you something here.
People who mix their politics up with their investment activities, I don't think that makes sense. I've watched it all my life, and obviously, probably half the time of my adult life, I've had a president other than the one I voted for, but that has never taken me out of stocks. I mean, the American economy, you know, we're up to number 45 or so, and we've done awfully well. If you mix your politics with your investment decisions, you're making a big mistake.
Although in terms of just
Charlie Munger.
Oh, sorry, Beth.
Go ahead.
Just one last thing. You talk about how great democracy in this country is and the dynamism. And I have seen people, you know, in the Journal op-ed or wherever, just people that say that democracy is ending. They look at this election and they say, wow, this is like the way it happened, another orderly transition of power, you know, and it was the way that it was done. It brought tears to their eyes in terms of this is still this is a prime example of how well things work and that democracy is alive and well, right?
Yeah, Joe. In 1951, I proposed to my wife, and my father-in-law was the most conservative guy in Nebraska, except maybe for my dad. My father-in-law said, I want to have a talk with you. So I went over to his house to have a talk, and he sat there and he said, Warren, he says, I just want to absolve you from any worries. You're going to fail. And the reason you're going to fail, my daughter may starve to death, and you're going to fail, but I'm not going to blame you because it's because the Democrats are in, and they're all communists. And I listened to this thing for 3 hours, and I almost withdrew my proposal at the end. But I have seen people make economic decisions based on their political feelings, and it is not the way to do it.
Do you remember back in the 1980s, anybody here maybe watched television between like 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. back in the 1980s? What was on? Ken, what kind of names?
Oh, it was Days of Our Lives, General Hospital, maybe As the World Turns.
Remember those? Those are called soap operas, remember?
I was not watching that, by the way.
Right? So today, between 2 and 4 p.m., what has that been replaced with? Politic operas. Called Fox News, CNN, but it's 24/7. It's become entertainment. Politics has become entertainment. They're trying to get you aggravated and upset. So it's interesting to watch that. And you start to look at this. This basically tells you that when your candidate is in office, you feel really good. So when a Democrat was in office, the Democratic constituents felt really good about the economy, and the Republicans not so much. When there's a Republican in office, Republicans feel really good about it. It's kind of like when your team's playing. When the Packers were really good this year, everybody's a fan. Last year, toward the end of the year, people got rid of their season tickets. You've seen it, right? So you start to look at that. It's just one of the pieces we see. It doesn't matter who's president. The market does well over time. 1948, there was a president who was elected that wasn't supposed to be. I think it was Dewey. And essentially, if you got out of the market, which a lot of people thought about and did, you'd have lost 50% 4 years later in 1952 by the next election. It's counterintuitive, okay? So looking at who's president is not going to be your economic goal. This is a prism with which not to look at your portfolio. It's interesting and very visceral for you, don't get me wrong with that, but it's not the way to look at your portfolio and returns. Now, this is a good one. This is something that we wanted to add to it. We just got a few pieces here that as you are bringing things up to us, we thought these are things that we should share with you because you may not have asked this question.
So we're going to pivot right now. We're going to go from the investment talk to the planning conversations that we have in our meetings. And what we're hearing from you is the death of a spouse. I know it's not that fun to talk about, but we're the ones who gets to sit with the other spouse who passed, who's still alive and go through the situation. And what we're seeing here are a couple conversations that we need to have if we're not having them, if this is your scenario. Pension continuation. One of you may have a pension in your home. And some of those pension decisions that were made 25 years ago, some of those are single life pensions, means that they're going to end when that person passes away. Okay? Now in today's world, I think we do the spousal continuation quite frequently, but we've seen a couple scenarios where the pension's going to end. Let's be careful of that. Let's have that conversation if you think that's your scenario, because Chris and I and our whole team and Zach and Peter want to make sure that you're the spouse that is still with us can live and not have to worry about what's going to happen to them, if they're going to be okay with money, okay? The other one is Social Security. One of the Social Securities will go away, okay? So if there's 2 earners in the home collecting Social Security, one of those is going to go away. Let's plan for that, because if someone has a $1,500 a month benefit, that's $18,000 a year. That can change someone's lifestyle if that goes away, if we haven't necessarily saved enough in our portfolio, or maybe even the portfolio can make up that difference, okay? Let's have these conversations if you're concerned about these. One of you changes light bulbs in the house. One of you mows the lawn. These are very, very real things that we hear in meetings is, now who's going to change the light bulb? Who's going to take the lawnmower to get fixed? Who's going to do these things? One person was typically doing it. Personal finances. I'm going to make a very general statement, but generations evolve. And a lot of people in this room, it was very common for one or the other person to handle the finances pretty much predominantly. Mm-hmm. And that when that person is no longer here, it's the other person. It's the surviving spouse that has to handle the finances. That can be very, very overwhelming to somebody if they've never, ever done it before. Now they have to make all these financial decisions, and they have to make them within 9 months to a year. So we have to make sure we're having those conversations as well. Taxes. If one of you does the taxes by yourself, and we know quite a few of you do, not an issue. But when you're not doing them anymore and you're the one that passes away, your spouse has to somehow do the taxes. That becomes an issue. Does he or she do them by themselves? Do we have to find a professional? So these are really the main issues we see when a spouse passes away. I know this isn't fun to talk about, but this is real life situations that Chris and myself and Zach and Peter, we come across these 6 or 7 in the last year or so. It's very sad, but we want to make sure we're having these conversations before it happens so we can plan before it happens, and we can be okay. A couple other ones that we've heard about is what are some best ways to give? And up here are a few of them. Qualified charitable distributions. This is for if you're over 70 and a half. You have to be over 70 and a half to make a distribution from your IRA to, let's say, the church, if you will. You can make a qualified charitable distribution from your IRA and send it directly to your church, and that doesn't show up as taxable income for you. So because of the tax law changes and the standard deductions all went up, this really becomes in play now because we get the benefit from a tax-paying situation. Donor-advised funds, this can be of any age. But again, because of the tax law changes, some of our donations that we give to certain organizations don't really benefit us anymore from a tax standpoint. So these are called donor-advised funds. Basically, you're in control. It's your pot of money that you've given to this new account. You get a tax deduction for that. Now you can dole out where you want your distributions to go. So where we see this being used is if we're considering stacking donations. What that means simply is that if we're going to give a certain dollar amount over the next 3 or 4 years, and we know we're going to do that consistently, well, it might make sense to put them all in 1 year. That's called stacking donations. And that way we get the tax benefit just by kind of front-loading our donations. So that's something to consider as well. Here's an interesting one I'm hearing in meetings, is it's giving now versus giving later. So what we're seeing is actually some test cases by parents, some of you, where it's kind of a nominal amount, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 of a gift to a child, because some of you told us, we want to see how they react to having $2,000 or $3,000 and see what they do. Not that you're going to judge or anything, but if things don't, well, maybe you will.
No, you will. You will. Come on now.
By that response,
I've been with you before.
Maybe you will. Okay. I didn't know you were so judgmental. Apparently. But if we can see what they're going to do with $3,000, what are they going to do with $300,000? That's the whole point. So some test giving is what we're seeing in meetings right now as well. What is the Secure Act? So here's a few things in Congress that you may have heard about on the news. It's called the Secure Act, setting every community up for retirement. That's what that stands for. And what's on the table right now, this is in Congress right now, that they're going to change the required minimum distribution from age 70 and a half, that's currently right now, up to age 72. Now, we don't know what the details are. If you're 71, do you have to do it? Do you get grandfather? Are you in the middle of it all? We don't know the details yet. But we're keeping a close eye on this because it's going to affect some of your scenarios in the audience right now.
Absolutely.
The other one is going to be, so right now, if you inherit an IRA from somebody, a spouse, a friend, whatever the case may be, you have the ability to stretch that out over your lifetime. So the IRS has a table, just like RMDs, the required minimum distributions. They have a table that has our life expectancy on that. Isn't that nice of them to do that? So it's out there, but we can stretch it over our lifetime. So if someone's 40 years old and they receive some money, they can stretch it over 30, 40 years. Do you think that makes a difference? That does. What the Secure Act is saying is that it's going to be truncated down to 10 years only. So there's a little give and take on this act that's going on right now. Something to be aware of if one of your goals is to leave some money to somebody. So now it's only 10 years versus their lifetime. That can change some of the planning that we do. If that's your scenario, let's have a conversation about it. The other one is repealing the maximum age that you can make a contribution to an IRA. Right now it's 70 and a half, the same age as that required minimum distribution. With the workforce working longer and longer and longer, some people would like to make contributions to IRAs while they're still working, even at this age. Even if for something that you have a passion about, you make a little bit of money, why not make a contribution to an IRA? So that's on the table as well. Here's an interesting one. We've heard this one a couple times in meetings as well. As some retirees, they know they're spending too much money. We talk about a 4% withdrawal rule. Chris talks about it, myself, Zach, and Peter. We talk about this a lot with all of you. 4% spending rule. Now, what we're finding, though, is that if we take a deep look, okay, and if this is your scenario, does your budget line up with what you value? Does your budget line up with your priorities? Okay? So a question that you could ask yourself is, what do you value more than money? We've heard a lot of people say, friends, family, health, experiences. Because what's happening here is there's studies being done that says 60% of parents living today have a regret that they bought too many things for their kids rather than providing them with experiences. 60%. That's a big number. So again, look at your budget if you feel that you need to do that. And say, okay, I'm spending like 30% of my income on cars. Why would I do that? I don't even value the car anymore. I just want it to get me from point A to point B. I wanted to get me from Blue Mound back home, right? That's it. So just a piece there that we're hearing as well. Does your budget line up with your priorities? Now here's a fun one. This talks about what your peers are doing. So sometimes we like to compare ourselves to other people, whether right or wrong, and you all are very judgmental apparently with the giving of your... So we need to go through this, a few of these, okay? All right. So here we go. Retirees expected to take 4 to 5 leisurely trips in 2019. 4 to 5 leisurely trips. In total, those 4 or 5 trips add up to $6,600 worth of a cost to take those trips. Now, these are the averages. You all are above the average, for sure. I know that. We see the trips you take. We know that you're above the average. 72% of retirees read food labels to see if the food is healthy or not. 72%. I asked the question, what are the other 28% doing? Someone told me they're at the drive-thru line at Taco Bell. Just saying. 70% of retirees own a smartphone. Who here owns a smartphone? I just did the math, it's about 70%. The other 30% of you own flip phones still, but you're the happiest. So those who own smartphones, not so much. Those who own a flip phone or no phone at all are the happiest people we meet with.
One of my clients said, I have a smartphone, Chris, and flipped out a flip phone. It's pretty good. I enjoyed it.
Visa the credit card, Visa projects that 60-plus people of age will drive U.S. spending for the next 5 or 10 years. You have all the money. You have all the money that's out there. You will drive the... And why is that important? The U.S. economy is driven by 70% of consumption, us buying things. So if you keep doing your part and you start spending your money and buying things, we're going to have a pretty good economy for a pretty long time. Here's another one here. 60% of retirees financially support their children ages of 18 to 39. 60%. Holy cow. Heavens no, I heard up here. Heavens no. But retirees are becoming banks. Failure to launch, maybe. 40% have used Uber and liked it. Who here has tried Uber or Lyft? I see about 40% again.
On our vacation, Deb just lifted for the first time ever. So she joined the club. Joined the club.
And what was your experience, Deb? Was it excellent? Good. That's good. So those are some fun ones here. Now I'm going to take a trip down memory lane. I know that we're going to go here pretty quick. What do retirees only remember? Okay? Drive-in movies, Beatlemania, Miracle on Ice, when the U.S. beat the Soviets in 1980. I see a lot of nodding heads in there.
And not just the movie.
Yeah, for Zach and I, it's a movie right now. That's all we get, right? Dialing a rotary phone, typewriters, 5 and dime stores. 5 and dime. I see a lot of nodding going up and down. Smoking on airplanes. Unheard of, right? Unheard of. Paul Newman. The slickest guy on earth. Really quick, best places to retire in, okay? I know a lot of you winter down in Florida and Arizona. We hear all the stories. We love them. Someone just showed me a picture of an alligator or a crocodile. I can never remember the two. But whatever's in Florida was actually up on its hind legs, almost like ringing the doorbell. That's crazy. That's great. Watch out for gators. Arizona, so 50 states, right? 2 best cities in each state. So there's 100 on this list. This is according to Forbes. The criteria, doctor availability, crime rates, best city for aging, so air quality, walkability, bikeability, local schools ignored, but colleges definitely incorporated because of the community that larger colleges create in cities. So that makes sense. Arizona, a lot of you go there, 95 and 96 on the list. I thought that was interesting. I thought that was going to be pretty high. A lot of you go there. Florida, 83 and 84. West Virginia, 5 and 6. So if you've never been to West Virginia, maybe a road trip is in your future. Wyoming, 1 and 2. 1 and 2 in Wyoming. I find this very interesting. Vermont, Utah, Virginia, Texas, New Mexico, all pretty high up on the list. Wisconsin, 3 and 4. All right? Eau Claire and Madison are tied for the top spot in Wisconsin. So, not a bad, if you're still here, not a bad place to be, right? Not a bad place to be. So.
Thank you. So we're working on self-awareness and self-acceptance. I accept that we're way over, and the self-awareness is that I realized we're way over. Okay, so here's the point. Thank you very much for your attention here. I'm going to run through a couple things quick, but we're also going to bring up Tom, because anybody here who's 65 know what time of year it is? You have to renew what? Medicare. Does anybody get any flyers in the mail? Probably not. They're flooding him in the inbox. He's going to give a couple of points up here in a moment, but one thing that's interesting, so one more. When should your kids come see us? Here's what's interesting. We started together. You retired. I had no idea this would come. I've been in the business 25 years. I'm only like 30, so I don't know how that happened. But your children are now starting to come to us for retirement. So the question is, remember, you always have access to us. Your kids always have access to us when they have questions. No worries. But they want to come and engage us. Say, you've done well by my parents. We'd like to talk with you about retirement. So when should they? Why have we been building out a team? To serve you that way. So when they have life events, change of employment, marriage, children, retirement planning, when they get to 50, it's a magic age at 50 and 55. They always want to come see us, and general financial questions. So I wanted to bring this out there because a lot of you said it. It's been happening more and more and more. I wanted to bring that up to you. So we're prepared for that as well. You see Zach over here for some of the next generation clients as well. So I just wanted to bring that piece up. And without further ado, I want to bring up Tom. Tom's a great partner of ours. Ken brought him to our group. And he's helped a lot of people in the room look at some of their different choices when it comes to Medicare. Anybody here know all the choices available? Very familiar, read through all the prospectuses? Here's what's really kind of interesting. He has. So if you want to know what's going on with health insurance, he and his partner are very, very good at this. We've had Tom in many times. So he's become one of our partners in this, not partners in the sense of business. It's his business, but we want a great source. We want to source him for you. So I'm going to give him a couple minutes just to bring up some of the highlights of what you might be looking at right now.
Thank you, Chris. Everybody here okay?
Yep.
Thank you. So Chris already said, we know what time it is. It's open enrollment. Do you have any $100,000 bars left?
I do, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It started on October 15th. Who knows when open enrollment ends? December 7th. About 20 people said
Who said it? Yeah. Just start throwing them.
What are some of the things you can do during open enrollment? What are people doing during open enrollment? Primarily for people that have Medicare supplement insurance, which are a lot of people in here, they can look at their Part D drug plans and see if there's a better plan for them next year, because the drug plans can change dramatically. Some companies drop out, and then some companies dramatically raise their prices. We know one company that's restructuring their drug plans, and the premium's going from $26.40 a month to $52.30. So it's pretty much almost 100% increase. Wow. And so if you don't shop your plan or know that and just stay with the same plan, it's going to go up on you, and then you'll find out when you see your checking account or get your bill in the mail that it just suddenly went up 100%. So you have until December 7th, if you have Medicare supplement and a drug plan, to start looking around at a different drug plan for next year. If you like the plan you're on and it stays very competitive, your drugs are well covered, then you don't have to do anything. The plan will automatically renew for you. For those of you on Medicare Advantage, it's also the same time, December 7th is the end date, to shop for your Medicare Advantage plan. If you like the plan you're on, You get your notification of change by October 1st. That's the law. So you've already had it in your hands for a couple weeks. And you have the ability to look at other plans. You can look at your doctor list and your medicines and shop that plan as well. And you can make a change by December 7th. The change will take effect January 1st. There's actually a second period, January 1st to March 31st. It's only in its second year returning where you can change your Advantage plan during that time. So that's called a Medicare second open enrollment period. I'd like to take a little bit of a survey of all the people in here, because we have a good-sized group, of how many people have Medicare supplement by a show of hands. How many people Advantage? So it's almost always pretty close to 50-50. How many people still have health insurance through a former employer? It's getting less and less. Less retirees get to stay on their company plans anymore. How many people use the VA or have TRICARE through the military? Okay, a few. A few changes for next year. Medicare, for those of you on Medicare supplement plans, Medicare can raise the Part B outpatient deductible for your outpatient services. Going to the doctor, having a day surgery, having a test. Does anybody know what that deductible is this year? $185 is the Part B deductible. We know for sure that's going to $197 next year. So you'll have to satisfy that unless you have a supplement that covers it. And that's where one of the biggest changes is coming next year in 2020. There was a law passed in 2015 called MACRA, and it said in the year 2020, if you're not 65 yet, let's say you're turning 65 in March of next year, you will no longer be able to have first dollar coverage. You'll have to meet the Part B outpatient deductible on your own. So that's being taken away. The government has said insurance companies, you can no longer offer that coverage. If you already have it, luckily you are a grandfather. You're able to keep it for life. And a question is popping up now, well, what if I'm still working and I'm 67 years old and then I want to take a Medicare supplement next year? You can still get the Part B deductible. You'll still be able to add it onto your coverage if you want. But if you're turning 65 in the year 2020, you can't get it. You'll have to satisfy that deductible every year. Luckily, it's a small deductible, not taking up a lot of dollars, but it will be increasing over time. Nothing's changing on the Medicare Part A side as far as them taking any benefits away. Now everybody has to pay for Medicare Part B, whether you're on a supplement or an Advantage plan, correct? And if you're on Social Security, that money comes right out of there. The base premium this year is $135.50 per month. That is scheduled to change. It hasn't been official, but all the numbers we're seeing is that the base premium is going to go to $144.30. That's the rate that we're anticipating. There'll be a formal announcement within a month or so, but that's everything I'm reading is saying $144.30. And there, by the way, does anybody know what your Social Security is going up next year?
1.6. That's right.
That's exactly right. 100,000.
The only $1,000 person.
Who said that?
Yes, he did.
Who has a sweet tooth?
Does anybody know what the raise was this year for Social Security? 2.8. Very good.
I've run down.
Okay.
I'm out of
all
100
right.
grants. We got one. Ken's got one. Yeah.
Okay, you have one left?
Yep, he's got it.
Yeah, one more. Some people have to pay more for Medicare, Part B and D actually, and it's based on household income. For a married couple, for example, if you're making over $170,000 as a married couple, you don't pay the $135 for Medicare Part B. You pay more, and there's actually 6 levels. Does anybody know what that's called? There's a famous acronym. It's a female name. Starts with I.
Irma.
Irma? Did somebody say Irma?
I did.
Oh, you IRMA stands for Income-Related Monthly Adjustment Amount. So
Sweet.
some of you may be impacted by that. It's looked at every year. The government looks at tax returns. And for 2019, they're looking 2 years back. They're looking at 2017's tax return. So you're notified at the beginning of every year what your Part B premium is going to be, and if you're exposed to the famous IRMA. It can go as high as $460.80 a month just for Part B. That's before any Medicare supplement. Now, if a person is working, making higher income, and they retire, they can appeal the IRMA, and that was highly successful if you can demonstrate you're not going to have that same level of income anymore going forward. You won't have to wait the 2 years. It's modified adjusted gross income, MAGI is the term used. So you would talk to your tax person, say, what's my MAGI? And they would look probably at the last line of your first page of your taxes and determine what your modified adjusted gross income was. No.
No. She said, does it include Roth IRA withdrawals? The answer was no.
A couple other important points.
We also have a few tax accountants in the audience too,
Yes.
so if you have some questions, we'll put you in the right direction.
Afterward, yes.
One of the questions that comes up pretty much daily is, can you switch from a supplement to Medicare to an Advantage and go back? Or start from an Advantage and go to a supplement? And the answer is, it's very, very, very easy to go from a supplement policy to an Advantage, because the Advantage plans during this open enrollment period, they ask one and only one medical question. And that's, do you have end-stage renal disease or kidney failure? If you're able to say no to that, you are able to join the Medicare Advantage plan as long as you have Parts A and B of Medicare and you live in the service area. That's how easy it is to get. To go the other way, Medicare Advantage to Medicare Supplement, you have 1 year where it's guaranteed you won't be asked the health questions. But if you're on an Advantage plan for 2, 3, 5, 6 years and then want to switch, then the supplement insurance company can ask medical questions and they can say no. If a person has had a recent history of cancer or heart attack or stroke or diabetes with insulin, then they may say no, they may deny the application. They won't ask questions like blood pressure, cholesterol, osteoarthritis, borderline diabetes, but the more serious conditions they will ask. A question comes up, what if I had cancer 10 years ago and there's been no reoccurrence? Then that's okay, you're able to pass that health question. So that question does come up, and just want to let people know that is available, but not always guaranteed.
Awesome.
We've got one question, then I'm going to stay here afterwards for questions.
Yeah, in interest of time, so I know we've gone way over, here's the case. The most interesting 20 minutes is coming up. I mean this from yesterday's response, okay? We do this in Appleton ahead of time, but I know we're way over, so I get it. You guys we're going to give you a break for a moment, but if there's one very, very important question, we can ask Tom now. What I'd like to do is, Tom is going to be here at the break. I'm going to take the break, and I'm going to start in 5 minutes. So when we do this break, do it very quick and come back. I'm going to be about 15 instead of 30 minutes, but it's an extremely important part of what we were talking about today. So if you don't mind right now, I'll hold a question or two, and what we're going to do is thank Tom, take a 5-minute break, if you will, right now, and we'll hop back in. Is that all right, Tom?
Perfect.
One of the programs that I've been at here just recently, it just reinforced this, how important communication is in what it is we do every day. So what's the goal of communication? What's the goal of it? Communicate. That's pretty good. That's true. Yeah, I don't have $100,000 for that, but oh, I do. It's a warm one. No, Ken, you've already got one. But what is the job of it? What's the role of communication? Exchanging information, right? Understanding somebody else. How about listening? Right? One of my clients said, I got to turn my hearing aid. What? You look at these, it's true. He had said it yesterday. But the goal of communication is really for us to get messages across. But more importantly, too, it's to express how we feel and then listen to how somebody else feels. I think as you start to look at this today, I'm going to start with a story. Imagine a world Imagine a world where you can send your 8-year-old child 10 blocks away to the grocery store, and you can be certain that everybody in your neighborhood has their best interest at heart and is helping them, is caring, and there's no issues along the way. Full trust, full certainty. Who here would like to live in that neighborhood? Why does that not exist? There's all sorts of reasons. Don't answer it out loud, but let's look at a couple of different ideas here, because we have some strong issues with communication. One of the things I look at here is this Friedrich Nietzsche. So he's German, so I just kind of blared it, but it's Nietzsche. And he said this, and this, I'll paraphrase it, but he says, "You have your way, I have my way. As for the right way, the correct way, and the only way, it does not exist." As I paraphrase it, there's my way and there's your way. There is no the way. But I contend that most of the trouble in life is people trying to convince people that their way should be your way. Or me trying to convince others that my way is the way you should be. I just had a conversation with a dear relative in Colorado, and it was very interesting. The conversation came up, and it was very pointed about, people just da-da-da-da, and said, well, so you calling me an idiot? It was it's what it sounded like. No, that's not what I meant. Well, you get so fired up about this, it's not what you said, it's how you said it. So basically you're saying if I don't agree with you, I'm an idiot. No, that's not what I meant. But so the key is this conversation that you're having is often not just what you're saying. It's how you're saying it. Many people, as we age or as we move on, have very strong opinions on things as we get through. But your way and my way, there is no the way, is a big part of this. What I want, though, I want to do a couple, rather than just talk about it, which is somewhat interesting, I want to actually show you something. I need one volunteer. I need one volunteer who's brave. Just one. Anybody? Volunteer? Not even, you really don't have to be that brave. I just need a volunteer. Sure? Yeah, come on up. Yeah, whoever. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. So I'm going to have you stand right here in the center of the room, and I'm going to have you hold this just like this with your arms straight out. What colors do you see?
Blue, orange, white.
Okay. I see orange, yellow, and green. What colors do you see?
Well, blue, white, and orange. But I do know there's others.
Orange, well, yellow, and green. Who's right? Who's right here? See? Excellent, but here, now let me do this.
Perspective.
Now what colors do you see? So do I. We're in agreement. Thank you. Hence the illustration. But do you see how we were both correct on this? So what we wanted, yes, Ken will give you. So what's extremely important about the beach ball, is there ever a chance where you are 100% right that the world is flat? I offer this up as perspective because the beach ball, as an example, is as many of us get really deeply entrenched in our ideas, this is what happens. Also, we're working on our ability to put the proper slide up as we're talking. Just saying, okay? Hey! So, the next one, too, you guys have seen before. Now, let me ask about the world. Is the world becoming more volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, hence the word VUCA, or less? Shout out your answer. More. Thank you. Compared to what? Compared to what? Exactly. So if we were in pre-Europe in 1400 where they're fighting crusades, pretty complex and ambiguous then, right? Not very complex. You're either going to die or not because you're fighting against everyone, right? So you look at this and say, but as compared to what was a really good example. But you look at this VUCA, here's what's happening. The bullhorn is coming from what? CNN, Newsline, da-da-da-da-da, look at this. Da-da. Hey, the president ordered eggs today. Oh my God, what an idiot. You know, it's what happens. We're all hearing this kind of stuff on a constant basis. So as the world is becoming more volatile and uncertain, things are starting to affect us more. The people in your life, they say that you are the 5 closest people to you. That's most likely who you are. I've had people come up to me and say, Chris, I've eliminated 2. So I said it before, but it's interesting to watch people take that to heart and go, wow. So I offer this up to you to say, if you want the 5 closest to change, that's your job. Your home and workplace environment and the news you watch. Now, this is a great one. I had a client yesterday say this in our program. He said, Chris, one of the biggest benefits in life from this program has come to me from the third. So well, what is that? I haven't watched the news in 2 years, and he has a Whoop band. He actually has a Fitbit that measures his sleep. He slept deeper, longer, and with more recovery than he ever has. Hasn't watched the news in 2 years. So he didn't know that we landed on the moon. No, I'm just kidding. But you're starting to see massive changes in this. So here's one of the things. I portend this. Anybody here ever look at Instagram or Facebook? Don't raise your hand because the answer is yes. I would say, who wants to look at a scripted Hollywood movie? Who wants to look at something that is simply a setup? I was truly disappointed when I heard the Brady house wasn't a real house. But when it comes to Instagram or Facebook, all people are doing is showing you either their outrage and they want you to take it, like a teenage girl. A teenage girl comes home and she'll make her problem our problem. Because I'm sick of dealing with this. I've been dealing with it all day. Here, it's yours. You've seen people and what they say on Instagram? Or, more important, Facebook? I've seen replies where I'm going, nobody would ever say that if they have parents or a mother. Okay? So you look at this, and if it's a world that's also scripted, so you're seeing everybody's best moment. You're seeing somebody stand on a mountain like, look at me, I'm standing on the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. You see the next person over here vacationing in Jamaica, and you're sitting eating chips, watching, reruns of some sort of news channel, right? How does that make you feel? So when you're looking at a scripted life here, like an Instagram, Facebook, you got to be very careful, because what it leads to for us as human beings is comparison. Man, I'm not doing all that stuff. My life isn't that cool. But what you didn't see behind the scenes is all the peril going on in life. The fact that they mortgaged their last dollar and they're about to come home and get everything taken away from them, but they're standing on top of that mountain, and that's the picture you saw. Pretty happy, right? So always take this with when you're looking at grandkids, you get to see, fantastic. Be careful on consuming too much of this in any other way. So when you look at this, why is this important? As we look at this, and this is very, very important to our bigger picture, I was very fortunate to sit at a table, I don't know how, but to the right of me is Bob Uecker, to the left of me over here is Robin Yount. How does this happen? So as I'm sitting there, though, it's for the Chinooks baseball club, and Bob Uecker's going, man, I can't figure out why these celebrities don't come. We get Christy, I invited 10 of the guys to come, and they wouldn't show up when we used to do it. So basically, he tells me a story about he would hang out with all the players, he'd hang out with all the fans. After the game, he would go to the bar, and it was just a big community. I said, well, Bob, let me make a statement here. I would portend that we went from a we society, which you were in. It was all of us. It was a community. The baseball team was the fans, and then this and that. We hung out together. To today, I need a $10,000 appearance fee to show up. Why would I show up otherwise? You know what's interesting? It just takes this letter flipped over to go from a we to a me society. You'll notice this. The utopia I talked about in the beginning comes from what kind of a society? We take care of each other. The me is what's in it for me, and I don't care about the rest. So you'll see as things progress one way and another, you're going to see generations change. We hope to move more towards this we. I got another, here, this is a really good one as well. Since we're talking about perspective and how we see things, this is going to require a little participation with you, and I'm actually going to move the slide ahead to the right one. This is called A and B. Around your tables, some of you have 5, some of you have 4, but you're going to pair up. There's an A and a B at the table. So just start with the very first person, A, B, A, B, A, B, okay? So around your tables, A, B, pretty simple, right? A, B. You each have an assignment. You're going to need to grab your pen and potentially your Gentian journal right now. But something to write on, okay? And if you don't, if there's 3 of you at a table, if there's 5 at one, maybe you pair up with somebody at another table. Okay, so first determine who you are. If anybody doesn't have a partner for the AB, Ashley can or Ken can. Okay, do you need one? Oh, you guys are A and B. Okay, good, perfect. Yeah. So here's your job as an A. You can choose to put down what you like in this, but Share one of the biggest problems you're facing right now. It doesn't have to be personal, but some people it can be. It can be very therapeutic. Just write down the biggest problem you're facing right now as an A. Biggest problem. Just write it down. Okay? As the A's are writing that, A's mostly done. Biggest problem that you're facing right now. B. Okay? B. Your job as B is this. Right now, without thinking, write down the craziest thing you can possibly think of. Possibly craziest thing you can think of. Just whatever idea pops in your head, craziness. Write it down. Okay? I would like the A and B to pair up now, sort of face each other so you can talk. A, this is how it's going to work. A, tell the B what the problem is you're facing. B, read off what's on your paper. Now everybody back here to me for a moment. Everybody back here to me for a moment. Now this can go on for a long time after you've just shared that. But here's what's very interesting. I'm at a program with some of the top entrepreneurs in the nation, and I'm hearing the guy behind me go, that's bull, that doesn't help at all. Anybody here, did what the other person said to you not help your problem whatsoever? Yeah. You could see absolutely no connection. Now, I'm sitting next to a gentleman, and here was my problem. I said, I'm having a hard time practicing, let's call it just meditation, or really kind of just time, calming down. I'm having a hard time looking at self-awareness. It was a very interesting statement, and that's not the right word, but I'm having a hard time with mindfulness. See that? I just was. The guy next to me, without missing a beat, says, here's what he wrote down. Let's go on a mind-altering vacation. Now, we're in Colorado, mind you, so when he said that, I go, I guess that's the way to do it. We dropped the mic, we were done. Completely related, we said. Absolutely completely related. Now, what's interesting, the guy behind us said, that doesn't make any sense. That's no help whatsoever. The guy from Sedona over here says, he brought up his problem, and he said the answer was a clown unicorn. And he started going, wow, I could see how that might happen. Well, the clown, we did it in the unicorn, and so he made a connection. So here's what I want to say. You may have had zero connection to what you guys were writing down, but I can guarantee you, if I come around to every A, B in here, anybody here like to share their A, B response? I heard some stinking laughter, which is funny. Anybody here like to share it? Yes, please, Jane. Yes.
My problem was trying to figure out how long I'm going to stay in my house versus moving to an alternative.
Yeah, so trying to figure out how long I'm going to stay in my house was the problem. Yes.
Walking to Florida.
So hers was walking to Florida. How long am I going to stay at a house? Guess you're walking to Florida. See, it's kind of amazing. This is very connected, right? But two completely desperate things. So as you're looking at the different items. Anybody else want to share theirs? Please, yeah, Deb.
Repair to an automobile that we've had for over 20 years and travel in, and I'm in my 80s, and who's going first, the car or me?
So the question is, who's going first, the car or me? And Deb's statement was?
Mine was just personal travel into anywhere in the universe at any time.
Personal travel to anywhere in the universe at any time.
That may happen pretty soon.
Ken says that may happen pretty soon. See, it's amazing how these things correlate. You know what? Here's what happens. So when water runs down a mountain or into a valley for hundreds or thousands of years, what happens? What does it create? It creates a channel, right? Let's liken this to, for 50 years, whenever my spouse brings up this idea, whenever somebody hits us, so what happens? I get this visceral response. What happens? Well, I go to this certain reaction. When this sets me off, I do this. And if it does it for 50 years, what happens? It becomes a deep rut, really consistent pattern of behavior. Let me ask a question. If water's running down a mountain down this, how do you change that? There's one way. Damn! I just like saying that. Right up at the top. So if I go to the top of that mountain and I place a dam or a brick at the top, what happens to the water? It goes a different way. It makes two streams. This is what I'm saying here. You may have difficult conversation when it comes to politics, when it comes to seeing somebody else's side of the story. I would actually contend to say what you typically want to do, maybe in your old life, was the experience that I just had, that guy flipping me off on the road here, was the experience, so that was a horrible outcome. I look at it as, I said a prayer for the guy because I hope the guy was just having a bad day. Maybe I could raise it a little bit. But you look at the first one. The first one is you want to give him a finger salute, right? Hey, you're the problem. That's not quite it, but still. But what we do over time is instead, we learn to respond. Now, what is the difference here? Abraham Lincoln wrote hundreds and hundreds of letters. I think you probably know that. And guess what he did? He practiced this. He'd write the letter in his emotional state, and he would put it in his desk. He wouldn't send it until the next day. 90% of his letters were never sent. So, imagine a world where you could talk about different ideas without being so polar that you just shut down and don't even want to hear the other side. Is that a world that's progressive? Is that a world that we want to be in? I think we're going to have great conversation that way. So as we start to look at this, as we start to look at what we talked about here, what we want to introduce to you, we get this. We're based in finance for you. I totally understand it. We happen to get invited to programs where finance is a base, where we get these wildly impressive other ideas. So Dr. Patty Ann Tublin is actually one of the people I met. She's the #1 entrepreneur and psychologist in the world, which is, I think, by Fortune magazine, if you will. And she had a phenomenal conversation. We sat and talked for 2 hours during one of the breaks as well, and talked about these different ideas, these conversations, these different ideas. The beach ball came from her. But here's what happens. We look at a routine that we have. And when you have a routine, it becomes a habit. And once it's a habit, it becomes a trait. And once it's a trait, it becomes character. We don't all have the traits and characteristics we want. So the only way to change that is to go to the top of that mountain and change it, to make a new ritual, to make a new routine, to make a new habit. So you start to look at this in conversation. I look at this and say, who is right? You or me when we disagree? And my answer now is totally different. Both of us. We can both be right. But I can see your way around it. So we're about to enter a season of politics, polarized politics. I would say potentially be open to the side that you don't agree with. You might see it from a different perspective. It doesn't mean you're going to change your mind. It doesn't have to at all. It just means you might have a better conversation with somebody because the country is built on the differences, not everybody being exactly the same. So I look at this and I say, if you're looking at community, which we put together, we are a community. It's called common unity. 2 different words. Maybe it's not supposed to be pulled apart. I probably stole it from somebody. Plagiarism, remember I just made up the word? It came from somebody else. But when we look at community and common unity and what we do, if we can become better communicators and you come to me with an idea that's different than what I say, as an advisor, I think I'm right, so I'm going to tell you, right? With us, I want to listen to who you are, what you're about, and even if I don't agree with the idea, I want to understand it and have civil conversation about it. Versus, I see advisors on our industry all the time going, that's just dumb, you should never do that. Some of you in this room wouldn't be here if we were that way. As we become better communicators, more understanding, it's a massive change in how we bring value to you. I want your ideas. I want your opinions. I want to know who you are. And then I want to have conversation about it. So as we get better and better in what we do, this is some of the paths to mastery that we practice. I know they're not fundamentally based in finance, but I do know they're based in you being better people. And over time, if I'm exposed to that and I can help guide you or give you some information about that, and it may make a slight change for you that's for the better, I want to make sure I give that to you. So what we covered today, the Gentian update, which was phenomenal, market update, politics and investment decisions, questions we're hearing from you, and then the ideas of communication. Self-acceptance is one of those things that we all do. As I look forward to this next set of meetings with you, as you look forward to the next season, you're about to meet with a bunch of family. Is that correct? You're coming up on Thanksgiving. Well, the first one's Halloween, then Thanksgiving, and then the holidays, okay? So as you come there, you're going to find one of those less than savory relatives that you've met before that has a strong opinion opposite yours. All I can say, maybe practice the beach ball or the AB. This is what I find is impactful. So as we go, what clients have told us they appreciate about us is trust, support, appreciation, education, and community. You started with trust of us. Over time, we've built community. You share your stories. You share who you are with us. And it's tremendous. We all grow because of it. We appreciate that tremendously. And this is probably most important. Our role, leadership, discovery, discernment, and guidance. I pledge in the future on a constant basis to look to get better for you. I'm not going away. I'm committing to long-term with the business. I'm committing to long-term with you. But if I don't walk in, I have a team of specialists sitting in this room who are phenomenal. You may be in meetings with them from time to time because they're part of your team. We're all involved in your scenario. I want to bring that up. And that's our commitment to you. We want to get better and better and better and better at this. We want to have a better experience for you. So your feedback, your follow-up, extremely important to us. But most importantly, we get it. You'd like us to help with discovery, leadership, discernment, and guidance when it comes to your portfolio. And as you said in your responses via this, other things are beneficial as well. So our commitment to you is one that 25 years ago you may have selected me as an individual advisor. Today, you have one of the top organizations around supporting you. Our commitment is not that we're good enough. We think we have a long way to go, a long way to go. We appreciate you. We appreciate you giving us introductions to your relatives, your friends. We appreciate you staying here and really investing your time. And I think I lied a little bit. I'm a little over 15 minutes. I get it. But hopefully this piece here of the communication becomes very impactful. Maybe it's something you see. What I've learned from the best experts out there is I can tell you, but if we do an exercise, you learn in an experiential way and it's completely different. So I want to thank you all for being here today. What we're going to do is remain around for questions. I think we're going to have Tom over here as well in case you have any questions about Medicare. I know we've gone a bit longer. Self-awareness is definitely here. Self-acceptance, I accept that I went over. I'm sorry. But most importantly, I want to thank you all tremendously for giving us the opportunity to serve you. And like I said, the only award we look for every single year is for you to remain our client the next year and for us to do better and better. So thank you for coming out and seeing Gentian today. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.